Hello, in this video I will be deploying Spring Boot with two different profiles into the AWS using one AWS pipeline and two EC2 instances. In here I have a Spring Boot that I created 2 days ago, I think, to test it out, and I added some files, otherwise this will take very long. So to make everything short as possible, I already added these files, so I'm gonna go through this. Right now we have an empty class, and in here inside our source resources there's two different applications. I have let's go through the first one, which is the default that comes after you create the Spring Boot. We have an active profile, prod, and prod means like a production. This is just shortening. Then we have dev, and since we don't in here, like when we start the project, the default profile will be production, and the second one is we have to specify this, that's going to be running dev. So if we start the program, we can see here it starts active profile equal production. And if we specify here, we can do this in terminal as well, but we will just do here. When you're running in terminal, you just say like mvn spring column run, and you specify the profile. So if you rerun the project, we are using the development profile. So in here the path, it starts with where is it, if I have good eyes, here API v1 / development. So after the local, so if you go to our API / v1 / dev, yeah, that's running. And if we come back to the production, we have to specify, instead of this dev, we will be saying production, this name. So now we're gonna take this one and deploy it in AWS, so that we have two different environments, one for production and one for development. The dev is like where we test the code, make sure everything works before we go to the production. So we will make here a controller class. So we say here, since this is production, REST controller, and we're gonna give it annotation. It's REST endpoint, REST controller class, and it's gonna be have a get. Since this is slash, we don't have to specify anything, I think. Public string hello, it's just a name, and it's going to return a string. So I think we can return like a HTML h1, I think it was dot format, then h1, I think, hello from production. h1, and let's run the program, make sure it's product. Oh yeah, since we don't specify any profile, it will just run. Production, yeah, hello from production. So in this control class, we need to make it like a Spring profile equals prod, and we're going to create another controller class, which is dev REST controller, and it's going to be exactly same information here. Yes, instead of production it will be dev, and the profile will be dev, and it's going to be REST control class. So if you run the project again, and since we are inside the active profile is prod, if we try to go to dev, page not found, because we cannot go to that profile. And same thing, if we switch here to dev, we cannot go to production, same thing. So let's move on. So right now we're going to push our code in AWS update. No, I meant GitHub. So the first thing we need to do is configure a code build. With code build is just, it takes the project from source and like GitHub, and then builds project tests, so all the tests will run. And we have a Docker image here as well that's going to be built. So in our Docker image we are building and packaging and putting it in another image, and then pushing this image to our Docker Hub. So in here, Docker Hub, we have a repository where code build will push our project. So let's go through this build spec. Which code build needs this? It needs this file. Without this file, it cannot do it. You will have to specify another name, but it has to be exactly this name. I can show later. Let's go through here quick. It's just logs. Here we have an environment variable, Docker password. We are not going to put our Docker password inside here and push it into GitHub. That's not good. And here we have environment variables for username, Docker Hub username. So the first thing we will do is mvn clean message for like debugging something, and we are taking our Spring Boot. No, we are here Docker build -t, name it to this, and this name has to exactly be this repository, and you can give it like whatever tag name you want. Like here we have a tag name. So, and dot means inside the project. So it's gonna, by default, Docker will look Docker file, something that's named Docker file. If you name something else, you will have to specify there. Then after we build the project and put it inside the image and pushed gave it a tag name and build everything, we need to push this to our Docker Hub. Then it's just complete message. So the first thing we'll do is configure a code build. So I already have a code build because I don't want to specify my environment variables, which is secret. So what we will do is create a project and choose like a GitHub, or if your code is like code commit or a Bitbucket something. Right now is GitHub. You choose repository, and then you move on. This is default. If you already have existing role, you choose that. Else you just name a new service role. No, is this service role? Oh, okay. Existing role. Okay. Yeah, you create a new one. You can leave it default, which the other one I already have created a new one. And in our VPC, this is where we specify our environment variables, so that Docker can build the project and put it in a Docker image and log into Docker Hub and push the code. Else it cannot push anything there, since it doesn't have a login. So in here we have, since we specified here as an environment variable, Docker Hub password and Docker Hub username, we can take those without the $. We take the password, add name here, you add your Docker Hub password here, then you say that another field, you take the username, add your Docker Hub username that you logged into this account, and then you move on to the next page. And this is what I was saying, inside the project, if you look at the project, since we have this exact name, so we can just say use the build spec file, so it will automatically look exactly the name of build spec.yaml inside our project. Else, if you don't have that, you can just specify here something else, or the name of it. Artifact is going to be S3. Make sure you create an S3 bucket before, and you just pick one. Folder, you can name whatever you want. The format is going to be artifact, it's going to be zip, and yeah, optional, and you create the project. And since I already have it, so I don't need to do that. So after this is finished, we need to configure code deploy, and before we do that, we can do it. Let's create deployment, and EC2 instance, create. So now we need to create EC2 instance for our production and for development. So let's just say production EC2. Everything, most of it is going to be default, and make sure to create one or choose one. This is the most important thing. Make sure in IP address is enabled. Oh, first, and the most important thing, we need to create IAM user for our EC2 instance and code deploy. So let's go to the role, create role, service. It's gonna be for our EC2 instance. Choose the default one, and it's gonna have to have like a code deploy. So it can communicate with this. This policy can communicate with the code deploy. So next, I think this is the only thing we need. EC2 role, create, and now we have it. We don't need to specify anything else. We need to create another policy for our code deploy, so it can talk to the EC2 instance. We are going to create, if I see correct, it's going to be code deploy default, since we are okay. Continue, code deploy role, and we are going to go inside our code deploy role, attach policy, EC2 should come up, EC2 deploy. Yeah, here is the EC2 deploy for. Yeah, we need this policy so it can communicate with the EC2 instance. Now we have the policy completed, which is these two. This is for code deploy, this is for our EC2 instance. Let's go back to the EC2 instance and refresh. EC2 instance, default, it's gonna be that. We need to say it's enabled, existing, so we don't have to create excessive, advanced. Now here we add like our ACT role, and yeah, I think that's about it. Default, everything else default. So we go to our EC2 instance. We need to create another one for, now we have already our production. We need to create a dev EC2 instance, default. Make sure it can access the internet. We don't need to, we already have our default. Make sure to attach it to the policy we just created. Next. Now we have a two different one, we need to give it a tag name. We don't want it to be named just name. We can name it that one. Save. And the other one is going to be the same. Manage. Copy. Paste. Save. I don't know why this name disappears. Yeah, and let's refresh. It's still initializing, but we can still do our SSH connect. Now we need to install Docker inside EC2 instance and specify like and also install code deploy agent. Yeah, still initializing. Where's the here as the document, so we will need to install Docker and code deploy agent. So let's go. Let's copy this one. This will take like some time. We have to wait. Now it looks like it's logging in. Yeah. Yeah, now we're going to install sudo yum install docker and permission to install, yes. And looks like loading. Now we have installed. Let's just clear all of this. Copy, paste, Control C to cancel. We need to go into the root, so we don't have to say each time sudo. We already are sudo mode. Let's say service docker start systemctl enable docker user mod -a group docker ec2 user. Then lastly we need to give it that permission to execute. Chmod 666 /var/run. Yeah, permission to run. I think docker .sock. Now we have that. We need to install a code deploy agent. Where's the file? Let's just drag it here. And if you're running your EC2 instance with another region, you will have to change this north 1 to your region that you are in. Now we have that. We need to, before we install code deploy agent, we need one more important thing, which is to install something called Ruby. Yum install Ruby. Yes to install. And after we have that, we can install our code deploy agent. And let's do ls. We already have that installed. We need to give this, if you do ls, as you can see, it just has read and write. We need to give it an execution permission, chmod +x install. Then we need to execute this, and now our code deploy agent has been successfully installed. We can move from this. Now let's go into our dev, connect to our dev, do exactly the same thing, make sure Docker is installed, code deploy agent is installed, and we are good to go. Yum console. So let's just go in directly, and permission to execute, yes. What happened? Wait, did I? PS, no, Docker PS. What? think I mixed them together or something. Let's see. Docker PS. Oh, I think maybe. Okay. Why is it? See the tags. Alright, maybe I chose the first one. Was it dev, I think? Okay. Let's go to the second one. Let's see, Docker PS install. No, that's good. Let's go to sudo mode. Permission to install, yes. Nope. Where is the file? Let's recopy this again. I believe this is our dev and this is our production now. Clear. Paste. No, cancel. Service, Docker, start. Cancel. System CTL, enable Docker, user mod dash a dash group, EC2 user. Did I misspell? User mod dash a dash Docker, yes. Then lastly permission 6/run. var /1 docker dot, and we need to install Ruby yum install Ruby and permission yes. And finally we need to install our code deploy agent. Let's keep in mind this is our dev and this is our, so I know. Ls, we have it installed. Let's give it permission to execute. This install and did I cancel? Now we have our development and prod ready to go. We need to add one more thing. Give it environment variable for or specifying environment variable, making it environment variable Spring Boot profile to be dev. So we can copy this. I believe this was dev, so we just paste it. So this is just in the system we are setting the profile to be equal to dev, and it's going to be an environment variable. So this is our environment variable, and then we are making it to equal dev, and we are saving it in /etc/environment. So when Docker code deploy one goes inside this user instance and tries to run the program, Docker will automatically look this environment variable this environment variable inside inside the EC2 instance, and I can show later. And the other one, it was production, paste. We have to go in sudo mode to do that, to execute this. So now this has an environment variable of Spring Boot profile, active profile equal prod, and the other one was dev. So now I can explain this environment variables more details. Now the EC2 instance is completed. Now let's come back to our code deploy agent. No code deploy, just code deploy. So now the build is completed. Let's go back to code deploy. Code deploy, since code build uses build spec as an instruction, what to do, like how to build, what to do, like where to push things, or where the artifact, where to save it, everything that. And same with code deploy. Code deploy needs a script, since we are deploying it in EC2 instance. Towards EC2 instance, we need to specify how it's going to deploy. If we are using ECS, we don't have to have a script. It will just deploy. So let's start from the beginning. Abstract, which is the most important thing. Let's make it bigger. In here we are saying source. Copy the source code, place it inside temporary directory, and create this folder. And the final name is going to be source. So our source will be inside a folder called, that will be created a source. And same thing, we are creating our POM file, all dependencies, and then we are creating the script, the instruction for code build, how it's going to deploy the project. And here we have hooks before install. What's going to happen before? Maybe we need to install some things before we run the program. After install, what's going to happen after the program has been started? Here is it. And then application start, how application is going to be started, and health check, making sure everything will run correctly, and seeing the health check. So in here, it's not a requirement. Application start, we are getting the environments. We are exporting the environments, and then here is what I meant, since when we are building when we are getting the Docker from Docker Hub, we have an environment variable Spring Boot profile. Since we have this in our EC2 instance and we already specified what is going to be, so in our EC2 instance production, it will be Spring Boot profile equal production as an environment variable. It's already predefined. So when this line runs, Docker will automatically, when it hits this environment environment variable, it will automatically look the host environment variables. It will just go through and make sure this name has a value inside the host. So we already specified what the environment variable is going to be equal to. So in this case, equals to prod. So Docker will automatically look the host, which is this inside this EC2 instance, here where what environment variable is going to be equal to. So it already knows that. So we are saying Docker run detach mode behind the scene, just name, we are just giving it a container name, and active profile as the environment variable. So this can change based on which host you are in. This must be something else. The -p port, and we are going to our repository and tag. So this tag, our code build already built it and deployed into, not deployed, but pushed in our Docker Hub. And since we gave a container name deploy, we need to make sure before this is executed, make sure any container name called deploy is stopped and removed, and this command can run. And in here we are just copying from abstract, since we copied our source code and place it inside here. In here what we are doing is taking it, going inside this folder and copying it to our home directory. Since this is not really needed, I don't see why we use it. No, yeah, this is from another project where, yeah, we don't really need that, so it can be removed because we are getting automatically from Docker Hub. And let's push commit, push anyways. And now let's configure quickly our deployment. This is dev group 1. Since we already have like our IAM user role, we can just take a default. It's gonna be EC2 instance. It's gonna be dev. It's gonna be dev. We already installed code deploy agent, so we don't have to install again, so we can just say never. Everything's gonna be default. And let's create another one. Prod group 1. Same thing. Let's just choose to production EC2 instance. Since we already have a code deploy agent installed inside the EC2 instance, we don't have to install again. Code deploy, and that's how we have our code deploy finished. Let's come back to our pipeline. Create pipeline. Pipeline name is going to be CI CD, just a name, and then existing role if you already have it. If you don't have it, you just specify it. No need to specify that. I'll just take the default one. Let's just restart again. Yeah, default, source, GitHub, connect, and here you will have to log in your GitHub account. Since I already have it, I don't have to do that. Confirm, place it. Deploy. And the moment a push happens, it's going to automatically detect. Next, let's configure our code build. We already have code build. Next, we skip this stage, and I can explain why we skip this page. Continue the pipeline, and it's going to create our pipeline. The reason why we skipped is because sometimes you can have like a problem with permissions, and even if you give the right permissions, it will still fail. Let's say this is development environment. As I already created this before, we can just take the same name, add stage, add group stage. It's going to be dev. It's going to be code deploy. Artifact, here is why we skipped the code deploy. Because if we didn't skip, the code pipeline will automatically use the source artifact, and it will give it first to code build, and code build will take the source, build it, store it in artifact. And what code build will do is it will take the artifact that code build used. So it's going to be source. Code build will use the source to build the code and make sure everything works, and save all of that in artifact. and code deploy will access that artifact. So from S3 bucket, and sometimes there will be permission problem like I documented a little bit here. Unable to access artifact from S3. This is code deploy message. No, this is the pipeline message that code deploy cannot access the artifact from S3 bucket. So instead of code deploy accessing the artifact from code build, it's gonna directly access from the source. We need to specify deploy. This is our dev, continue, done. We need to add a manual approval. And done. Where we need to add the action group. Let's choose a manual approval. Everything else is optional. We're gonna continue with production. Let's continue prod and then code deploy. It's gonna access from source. It's gonna be production, done, and now we can save the pipeline and repaste. Make sure everything happens, and now it's gonna be success, and we're gonna come to manual approval, and we're going to approve whether the changes that happened all the way here and after this deployment was successful. Make sure if we want to continue the changes to be passed to the production. So this should always be protected, because every time you write code and code builds, make sure everything works. It's going to be deployed into the development environment where we can test, make sure everything works, like for the user, and everything else is perfect. After that, if we want that version to be continued to production, we can just manually approve, and it will continue to be deployed into production. And here we will change our Spring profile as well to be production. In here it will be dev, and we can verify that in a bit. I was going to mention I did a YouTube video before 4 months ago. So where I made like simple deployment. So this is gonna be like this video is gonna be like almost part 2. And it's gonna take time. And also I forgot to mention that after we have this Docker build, I forgot to mention that the project, the final root, the final name of the project when after it has been built successfully, it's gonna be named root. So if we run the project again, like package, everything together, the final name is root.jar, and in our Docker file it looks for the name root.jar from the project. It copies. You can stop this. And that's about it, this project. Everything's going to be successful. Now we are deploying the changes to dev environment. Then we're going to manually approve. See, and success. So we're just waiting the manual approval to give us like a review, then we can review it. So if we go to our dev, let's say Docker PS, here we are seeing the deployment. And how do we verify the development environment? No, the dev profile has been successfully deployed. We can say docker logs container name, deployment, or use container ID. Here we can see active profile equals dev. So let's just approve the other one, manually approve. Reject means the pipeline will stop and all the changes will, only development will see. If we approve, the changes will continue. That happened here will continue to production. And the worst case here, in code deploy, you can configure a rollback where you can, if bad change happened, you can just always roll back. But in this case, we disabled it. So if you go to our code deploy quickly, we can see it was very quick, less than a second. What? 9 seconds to start application. And if we go to our production, docker ps again, we see the container running successfully. And if we see it go inside the logs of the container, in this case we can take the container ID, the production profile has successfully run. So this was, it took like almost an hour. I was thinking more of 30 minutes, but yeah, now this is how we can have like 2 different environments using one AWS pipeline, which was the goal of this video, to have this. Let's take a picture of this. And yeah, and I will put this in a YouTube if I can. And that's about it. What else am I gonna to say? Now we have we made it this like an environment variable. We can also do this like for databases. For example, in our Spring Boot application type properties, one of the more important reason we have application type property is many things, but one of them is like for databases. For example, production environment, you will have like a database credentials here, and for dev you're gonna have totally different credentials where you just test databases to write information. And the dev database is not connected with production. So since we did something here, we can also do similar with database, where we can set environment variable and value, like in this case it will be credential inside the, we can predefine it inside the EC2 instance, so we don't have to place it in somewhere else. So all the information, all the credentials for each profile, like in here, since this was dev, the credential we can put it inside the EC2 instance already predefined, like just like we did for this, so that when this profile runs, it exactly knows which database to connect to. We can also do that similarly, but I haven't really experimented, but it's possible. And that's how I end the video.